Have you noticed that some people can leave your life, yet somehow they never truly leave your energy? They disappear from your messages. They stop calling. They convince themselves that walking away was the right decision. Yet something keeps pulling them back to thoughts they cannot explain. If this message has found you today, don't dismiss it as coincidence. There are moments in life when the heart recognizes something long before the mind is ready to understand it. This may be one of those moments. Close your eyes for just a second and think about the person who crossed your mind the instant you heard these words. You didn't choose that memory. It arrived on its own. Carl Jung believed that what remains buried within us never truly disappears. The emotions we refuse to face continue shaping our lives until they are understood. Sometimes distance does not erase a connection. Sometimes it reveals just how deeply that connection has taken root. The person who walked away may have believed they were leaving you behind, but they were never leaving the part of themselves that changed because of you. That is why peace has been difficult for them to find. Outwardly, their life may appear normal. They laugh when they're expected to laugh. They carry on with routines that seem unchanged. They tell themselves they made the logical choice, yet quiet moments tell a different story. Because silence has a way of revealing truths that noise can hide. Late at night, when the world slows down, memories begin to surface without invitation. A familiar smile, a conversation they thought they had forgotten, a look in your eyes that stayed with them far longer than they ever expected. These moments don't arrive because they are trying to remember you. They arrive because something within them refuses to let your energy fade. Perhaps you've wondered if they ever think about you anymore. Perhaps you've questioned whether everything you shared meant as much to them as it did to you. Those questions can become heavy when they remain unanswered. But sometimes the answers are not found in words. They are found in patterns, in feelings that appear without warning, in the strange pull that cannot be explained through logic alone. Have you ever suddenly felt someone's presence while sitting alone? Have you ever heard a song and instantly felt connected to someone you hadn't thought about all day? Moments like these often leave us searching for explanations. Whether you see them as intuition, memory, or meaningful coincidence, they remind us that some experiences continue echoing long after people part ways. What truly connects two people is not always the time they spent together. Sometimes it is the impact they had on each other's inner world. That impact cannot be erased simply because one person chose distance. It continues shaping both lives in quiet, unexpected ways. If these words resonate with something you've been carrying inside, write, "I feel this," in the comments. Sometimes the smallest acknowledgement is enough to remind us that we are not alone in what we feel. There is another reason this message may have reached you today. The energy between two people rarely disappears overnight. It changes, it transforms, it waits. Imagine someone standing at the edge of a shoreline. They believe they have left the ocean behind, but every wave still reaches their feet. That is what unresolved emotions often feel like. The person who walked away may have created physical distance, yet emotional distance follows very different rules. Every attempt to forget becomes another reminder. Every effort to move forward quietly circles back to the moments they tried hardest to leave behind. The more they convince themselves that you no longer matter, the more unexpected reminders begin appearing. Not because the universe is forcing an outcome, but because unprocessed emotions naturally return until they are understood. And perhaps that is what comes next. Not necessarily a message, not necessarily a reunion, but a realization they can no longer avoid, a realization that some connections change who we are forever, and once that happens, walking away no longer feels like freedom. It feels like leaving a part of yourself behind. The quietest battles are often the ones no one else ever sees. The person who walked away may look completely composed on the outside. Their days continue, their responsibilities remain. To everyone around them, life seems unchanged, but inside, something has shifted. Not because they expected to miss you, not because they planned to look back, but because your presence became part of their inner world before they ever realized it. Carl Jung believed that what we reject does not simply disappear. It retreats into the unconscious, where it continues to influence our thoughts, emotions, and decisions. The same can happen with a meaningful connection. Someone can leave physically, yet discover they cannot leave emotionally. At first, they convince themselves that time will solve everything. A few weeks. A few months. I'll eventually stop thinking about them. It sounds convincing, until ordinary moments begin carrying extraordinary memories. They pass a familiar street. A song begins playing in a cafe. A certain fragrance fills the air. Without warning, your memory returns. Not because they invited it, because something inside them still recognizes what your presence meant. That realization can be deeply unsettling, especially for someone who believed walking away would bring certainty. Instead, it brought questions. Questions they never expected to ask themselves. Why do I still remember their smile? Why does their voice still echo in my mind? Why do I compare everyone I meet to someone I already left behind? These are not comfortable questions. They challenge the story they've been telling themselves. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is not that you loved someone, it is realizing you never stopped. And deep down, they are beginning to sense exactly that. If these words speak to something you've experienced, take a quiet moment and write "still connected" in the comments. Sometimes acknowledging a feeling is the first step toward understanding it. There is something else happening beneath the surface. People often believe energy exists only in mystical ideas. But think about your own life. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed tension without anyone saying a word? Have you ever met someone who instantly made you feel calm? Human beings communicate far beyond language. Our emotions leave impressions. Our presence changes people. And some people leave an impression so profound that years cannot erase it. You may never know all the ways your energy affected this person. Perhaps you encouraged them to believe in themselves when no one else did. Perhaps you listened when everyone else was too busy to notice. Perhaps you accepted parts of them they spent years trying to hide. Those moments matter far more than people realize, because genuine acceptance is rare. Once someone experiences it, they instinctively search for it again. And when they cannot find it elsewhere, they begin looking backward instead of forward. That is why memories often grow stronger with time, not weaker. Distance removes distractions. It leaves only what truly mattered. Jung often explored the idea that meaningful relationships become mirrors. They reveal parts of ourselves we could never see alone. Sometimes the person who walked away wasn't running from you. They were running from what they discovered about themselves when they were with you. Because real connection has a way of exposing hidden fears. Fear of vulnerability, fear of change, fear of not feeling worthy of genuine love. Those fears can convince someone to leave, but they cannot silence the truth forever. Eventually,
the heart grows tired of arguing with itself.
And when that happens, the smallest reminder becomes impossible to ignore. A photograph, a familiar place, a shared joke, even silence can become a reminder. Because silence has its own language. It speaks through unfinished conversations, unanswered questions, words that remained trapped inside the heart. This is often the stage where everything begins changing. Not on the outside, on the inside. Long before anyone sends a message, before anyone reaches out, before anyone admits what they truly feel, there is an invisible transformation. It begins quietly, almost unnoticed. Like the first light before sunrise, the person who walked away starts realizing something they spent months trying to avoid. Leaving created distance, but it never erased the connection, and every day that realization becomes just a little harder to ignore. Soon, that inner conflict begins asking for an answer, not from the world, not from other people, but from the deepest part of themselves. And once someone begins listening to that inner voice, life has a remarkable way of leading them toward truths they never expected to face. There comes a moment in every meaningful connection when silence begins to reveal more than words ever could. The person who walked away may still tell themselves they made the right choice. They repeat it often enough that it almost sounds true. Almost. But the heart has a strange way of interrupting the stories the mind tries so hard to believe. Without warning, your memory appears in the middle of an ordinary day. Not because they were searching for you, because something inside them never truly stopped carrying you. This is where many people become confused. They assume remembering someone means they are simply being nostalgic. But not every memory returns for the same reason. Some memories fade naturally, Others grow stronger because they are connected to something unfinished. Jung often described the unconscious as a place where unfinished emotional experiences continue seeking completion. They wait patiently beneath the surface until the right moment arrives. That moment may be arriving for this person now. Have you ever noticed how the people who claim they have moved on sometimes mention your name without realizing it? Or how someone who insists they no longer care suddenly becomes curious about your life? These moments are rarely planned. They happen because genuine emotional connections have their own rhythm. No matter how carefully someone hides their feelings, their attention eventually reveals what their words cannot. Perhaps they scroll past an old conversation they promised themselves they would delete. Perhaps they pause for a second longer than expected when someone mentions your name. Perhaps they wonder whether you're happier now, whether you've found peace, whether someone else now receives the kindness they once took for granted. These thoughts don't appear because they want to suffer. They appear because something inside them is beginning to wake up. Awareness often arrives quietly, not with dramatic announcements, but through countless small realizations, one after another, like drops of rain slowly filling a river. The strange thing about emotional energy is that it cannot be measured with numbers, yet almost everyone has experienced it. You've probably thought about someone moments before they unexpectedly contacted you. You've probably remembered someone you hadn't spoken to in years, only to discover they had also been thinking about you. Whether you see these moments as intuition, meaningful coincidence, or simply the way our minds work, they remind us of something important. Extends beyond what we can easily explain. The bond you shared may have left a lasting imprint on both of you, and lasting imprints rarely disappear simply because one person decides to leave. They become part of who we are. Sometimes the greatest lesson another person gives us is not during the relationship. It comes afterward, when their absence begins teaching us what their presence truly meant. That lesson has been unfolding within this person, slowly, patiently. Every day they notice something new. The peace they expected never fully arrived. The certainty they hoped for never settled in. Instead, questions continue replacing answers. What if they misunderstood what they were feeling? What if fear spoke louder than love? What if leaving solved nothing at all? These questions are not signs of weakness. They are signs of honesty beginning to replace avoidance. And honesty has a quiet power. Once it enters the heart, it becomes difficult to silence. If these words resonate with your own journey, comment inner truth. Sometimes a simple acknowledgement reminds us that healing begins with honesty. There is another change taking place that they may not even recognize yet. They are starting to remember you differently. At first, the mind tends to replay arguments, disappointments, moments that justify distance. But as time passes, those memories lose their emotional weight. What remains are the moments that carry genuine warmth, your laughter, your patience, the conversations that lasted longer than either of you expected, the feeling of being understood without needing to explain everything. Those memories become brighter because authenticity has a way of outlasting conflict. That is why they can no longer escape your energy. Not because you are chasing them, not because you are trying to pull them back, but because the version of themselves they became with you still exists inside them. And every time they remember that version, they begin wondering whether walking away also meant walking away from a part of themselves they were never meant to lose. That realization is gentle at first, almost like a whisper. But whispers repeated often enough eventually become impossible to ignore. The heart grows quieter, the mind grows softer, and somewhere deep within them, a new question begins forming. If this connection was powerful enough to survive silence, what else has survived that they have been too afraid to face?